Before I ask you to open the doors, before I ask you for the breakthrough, before I cry out for the blessing, Father, open up my eyes because I don't want to walk into what I prayed for, blind. I don't want to miss your hand at work because I was too busy watching the storm. Sometimes it's not that God isn't moving, it's that we're not seeing. So Lord, before you part the sea, before you hand me the keys, before I stand in the promise you made me, make sure my vision is right, correct my focus, fix my faith, because what good is the destination if I lose sight of the one who sent me? Before I ever reach for the door, I have to make sure I can see it. Before I even ask God to open up the next chapter, I have to pause and ask, and I see what he's already showing me. You see, we live in a world where we're taught to chase after the next thing, the next blessing, the next opportunity, the next open door. But what if the thing that's missing isn't the door, it's our vision? God doesn't withhold from us because he wants to frustrate us. He withholds because he loves us too much to give us something we can't handle in blindness. And spiritual blindness is more dangerous than any locked door, because when you can't see clearly, you'll walk into things that weren't even meant for you. You'll grab hold of counterfeits thinking they were blessings. You'll mistake movement for progress, and you'll get tired, not because God didn't show up, but because you couldn't see that he already did. So before I ask God to give me more, I ask him to give me sight. God, open up my eyes. Open them so I can see what you're doing in the silence. Open them so I can discern between what's real and what's just a distraction. Open them so I don't let fear define what you called faith. Open them so I can stop praying for escape and start trusting the process. It's possible to be surrounded by miracles and miss every single one of them because you're not looking through the right lens. The Israelites saw the Red Sea part, but some still complained. They saw water come from a rock, but still doubted. They were eating manna from heaven, and yet they questioned whether God was truly with them. Why? Because even when their eyes were open, their spirits were closed. So when I say, God, open up my eyes, I'm not just talking about what I see in the physical. I'm talking about the eyes of my spirit. I'm talking about a vision that sees past the surface. I'm talking about a faith that doesn't need evidence to trust God, because vision isn't just what you see, it's how you see it. You can be in the valley and still see purpose. You can be in the fire and still see favor, but that kind of sight only comes from God. And sometimes, to open up your eyes, God has to close some doors. He has to cut some relationships. He has to pull you away from the noise. Because spiritual vision isn't formed in the spotlight. It's formed in the secret place. It's in the quiet where you hear his whisper. It's in the waiting where you learn what's worth waiting for. It's in the struggle where you finally stop relying on your own understanding. God is far more concerned with your sight than your speed, because if you can see clearly, you'll stop rushing toward what isn't for you. You'll stop forcing what doesn't fit. You'll stop praying for what was only meant to be a lesson, not a lifestyle. God, open up my eyes so I can stop calling temporary things permanent. Open up my eyes so I stop making idols out of ideas you never approved. You may not need a new miracle. You may just need new vision. Sometimes what you're praying for is already here. You just haven't seen it for what it really is. The job you're complaining about is the training ground for your next promotion. The relationship that ended was God's redirection, not rejection. The delay is not denial, it's divine development. But if you can't see that, you'll mislabel the blessing and forfeit the lesson. When your eyes are open, you begin to walk differently. You stop being reactive. You start being intentional. You stop chasing feelings and start chasing truth. You stop comparing your lane to someone else's because you understand what God has for you is already marked out. You stop living like a beggar and start walking like a believer. Not because life is perfect, but because your vision is. Vision is what allows you to praise God in the middle of the problem. It's what keeps you grounded when everything around you is shaking. It's what reminds you that the same God who brought you through the last storm hasn't changed. But sight without surrender is just suspicion. If I ask God to open up my eyes, I have to be ready for what he's going to show me. And sometimes that means seeing the truth about myself, about my habits, about my heart, about my pride, about the things I've held on to that are actually holding me back. God, open up my eyes, even if it hurts. Even if it wrecks the narrative I created for myself, even if it strips away my excuses, even if it exposes what I didn't want to confront, because I would rather see the truth and be set free than live in darkness and stay stuck. I would rather walk in clarity with no applause than in confusion with a crowd. And here's the good news: when God opens your eyes, He also opens your understanding. He begins to show you how all the broken pieces are part of a bigger picture. He reminds you that you were never forgotten, never forsaken. You just weren't ready to see it yet. So the cry of my heart is simple: before the breakthrough, before the next level, before the door swings open, God, open up my eyes. Let me see what you see. Let me value what you value. Let me desire what aligns with your will. Because when my sight is surrendered, my steps will follow. And when I finally see clearly, I won't have to beg for the key. Because I'll realize the key has always been in your hand and you've been waiting for me to open my eyes. Sometimes the reason God hasn't handed you the key yet is because He knows your hands are still too full. Not with things He gave you, but with things you picked up out of fear, out of doubt, out of pressure, out of pain. You've been carrying things that were never yours to hold, expectations, timelines, old wounds, other people's opinions. And now your spirit is too cluttered to receive what God is trying to place in it. So before I ask for the next opportunity, I have to say, God, help me put down what's blocking my vision. Because you cannot receive what's new while you're still holding on to what's no longer serving you. It's hard to see clearly when your eyes are still focused on what happened behind you. Some of us are trying to look forward while still staring at closed doors. We're praying for direction, but we're stuck in regret. And here's the thing: God won't show you what's ahead until you're willing to let go of what's behind. He's too wise to build your future on broken sight. You don't need another prophecy. You need perspective. You don't need another platform. You need peace, because what good is a destination if you're still dragging the disappointment that distorted your vision in the first place? God, open up my eyes. Not just to see what's next, but to see what's still in me that you want to heal. Sometimes we're asking for a new season, but we're still walking around with a mindset shaped by old survival patterns. We're praying for purpose, but we're still governed by pain. We're asking for clarity, but we haven't confronted the lies we've believed for so long that they now feel like truth. And God can't bless who you're pretending to be. He can only heal who you're willing to reveal. When you ask God to open your eyes, be ready to see the parts of yourself that are still wounded, still bitter, still angry, still afraid. Not because He wants to shame you, but because He wants to free you. You can't conquer what you won't confront, and you can't be transformed by truth until you first recognize the lies. We often pray, Lord, lead me, but we forget that God leads by light, and light exposes things. It reveals cracks in the foundation, it uncovers hidden motives, it shows you the weeds growing next to your fruit. But exposure isn't punishment, it's preparation, because once the light shines, healing can finally begin. Clarity can finally come. Purpose can finally unfold. That's why some of us are in a season of discomfort. It's not an attack, it's an unveiling. God is peeling back the layers, the version of you that depended on control. The version that played small to stay safe, the version that avoided conflict and called it peace, the version that hid behind titles and routines instead of surrendering to real transformation. And it's not easy. But it's necessary, because a clear vision doesn't come from a comfortable place. It comes from the place where you stop pretending, where you stop running, where you say, God, show me what I'm afraid to face. Because I'd rather face it with you than live blind without you. God will allow situations that make you question what you thought you understood, not to confuse you, but to cleanse your vision, to show you that what you were calling truth was really just trauma, that what you called discernment was really just defense, that what you labeled as wisdom was actually a wound dressed up in spiritual language. So when you pray, God, open up my eyes, be ready for Him to rearrange things, to shift your circle, to challenge your habits. To stretch your faith, because He's not just trying to get you to a destination. He's trying to prepare your character for it, and preparation often looks like isolation. It looks like silence. It looks like being misunderstood. Because God has to get you away from the noise to teach you how to hear again, how to see again, how to believe again. He'll start pulling you away from what's familiar, not to punish you, but to protect the vision he's developing inside of you. Some of you are frustrated because you feel disconnected, but that disconnection is divine. It's not rejection, it's redirection. God is setting you apart so he can show you what others couldn't. He's separating you so he can reveal something sacred. Because vision requires intimacy, not the kind you perform on a stage, the kind you wrestle through in the dark, the kind where you stop praying polished prayers and start crying out from a real place. The kind of intimacy that says, God, I don't have it all together, but I'm here, I'm willing, I'm listening, and in that place your eyes begin to open, not just to what's around you, but to who God is in you. You begin to see that he was never asking you to figure it out. He was asking you to trust him through it. You begin to realize that the pain wasn't the end of your story. It was the breaking open of your sight. You begin to understand that everything you thought disqualified you actually qualified you for a purpose you couldn't see until now. So when I say, God, open up my eyes, I'm not just asking for vision. I'm asking for alignment. I want to see what you want for me. I want to crave what you created me for. I want to walk in what you ordained. Not just what feels good, not just what gets attention, not just what fits my plan. I want to live with eyes wide open, spiritually awake, emotionally honest, mentally clear, and rooted in truth. Because once your eyes are opened, you can't go back to settling. You can't go back to shallow. You can't go back to pretending. You've seen too much. You've come too far. You've been called too high. And yes, it's going to cost you something. But blindness costs more. It costs time. It costs peace. It costs purpose, and I've come too far to keep paying the price of not seeing clearly. So here I am, God. Take the scales off. Wipe away the fog. Remove the filters I placed over my own heart. And if you have to break me to free me, do it. Because I trust you more than I trust my comfort, and I'd rather be broken in your hands than whole in my own illusion. Open up my eyes, God, until I see like you, until I believe like you, until I love like you. Until I walk in purpose with no fear of the future and no attachment to the past. Open my eyes, and I will never live blind again. Sometimes we think the problem is that we can't move forward, but the real issue is that we don't see where we are. You can't step into what's next if you don't understand where you are right now. And sometimes the greatest miracle God can do for you is not changing your situation, but changing your perspective inside of it. When I ask God to open up my eyes, I'm not just asking him to show me the future. I'm asking him to help me see the present through his eyes. Because if I don't see this moment the way God sees it, I'll rush past something he's using to refine me. I'll pray for escape when I should be learning endurance. I'll resist the pressure that was designed to produce purpose, and I'll miss the holy in the hard. Sometimes we're so focused on where we're going that we forget to look at where we are. And where you are may not look like a promise, but it's part of the process. Your current season may feel like a pause, but it's actually a setup. It may feel hidden, but it's holy, and if God hasn't moved you yet, then there's something here you still need to see. Open up my eyes, Lord, not just to what's ahead, but to the assignment in front of me right now. Open up my eyes to the people I've overlooked, the blessings I've underestimated, the lessons I've been too distracted to learn. Because sometimes clarity doesn't come from going. It comes from staying present, staying surrendered, staying still long enough for God to speak into what's been buried underneath your busyness. And that's the danger. Busyness without vision, movement without direction, doing things because they look good on the outside while inside you're lost, blind, unsure, doubtful. You can build a whole life, a whole ministry, a whole image, and still not see who you really are. Still not see what God is trying to do in you, not just through you. We spend so much energy asking God to change our external circumstances, when often he's trying to shift our internal condition. Because it's not the wilderness that delays you, it's the way you see it. It's not the silence that breaks you. It's what you believe about the silence. It's not the storm that sinks you. It's your perspective inside it. So if I'm going to make it, I need God to open up my eyes, not to avoid the storm, but to recognize that He's with me in it. That even when it feels like I'm stuck, I'm still standing. That even when it feels like I'm behind, He's still ahead of me. That even when I don't understand it, He's still ordering every step. That even in my confusion, His plan hasn't changed. Open up my eyes so I can recognize grace when it doesn't feel like favor. Open up my eyes so I don't keep calling delay a denial. Open up my eyes so I stop interpreting discomfort as abandonment. Open up my eyes so I don't reject the very thing that's meant to transform me. When God opens your eyes, He doesn't always show you something new. Sometimes He just helps you see differently what's already been there. The same job, the same situation, the same you, but now with spiritual sight. Now with maturity, now with gratitude, now with a deeper sense of who He is and who you are becoming in Him. And that's how you start to grow. Not by changing everything around you, but by allowing God to renew everything within you. The eyes of your heart, the lens through which you process pain, the filter through which you hear His voice, the posture you take when the answer hasn't come yet. Because when you can see clearly, you'll stop asking, God, when will you fix this? And start asking, God, what are you forming in me through this? You'll stop seeing the season as punishment and start recognizing it as preparation. You'll stop fighting the fire and start finding God in the fire. God, open up my eyes until I see what you're shaping in me when nothing seems to be happening around me. And here's the powerful truth. Sometimes your sight will shift before your circumstances do. You'll still be in the valley, but now you see it as sacred ground. You'll still be in the same room, but now you feel peace where there was once pressure. You'll still be walking through the wilderness, but now you're walking with vision, and that vision will carry you when strength can't. Because when your eyes are open, you realize that it's not about everything working out the way you wanted. It's about being who God called you to be, no matter how things unfold. You stop being outcome-driven and start being obedience-driven. You stop chasing answers and start walking in alignment. You stop trying to control and start choosing to trust. And that kind of trust, deep, surrendered, unshakable, can only be formed when you start seeing the present moment as holy ground, not just as a holding pattern. When you stop measuring your life by results and start measuring it by revelation, God is not late, He's not distant, He's not silent. He's developing something in you that's going to require a new level of vision, faith, and maturity. So yes, ask Him to open up your eyes, but be ready for Him to shift your understanding of where you are and why you're here, because there's purpose in this moment. There's growth in this waiting. There's glory in this silence. And if you let Him, God will use every part of it, not just to change your destination, but to change your discernment. Open up my eyes, Lord, until I stop measuring this moment by what I lack and start recognizing it by what you're producing. Open up my eyes until I see that you're not just preparing a place for me. You're preparing me for the place. So I surrender this season. I surrender this perspective. I surrender this timeline, this expectation, this pressure I've been carrying. And I choose to see it differently, because when I see differently, I live differently. And when I live differently, I walk in purpose. Even when the promise hasn't arrived yet. Let it be said of me, I didn't just wait, I worshiped. I didn't just endure, I evolved. I didn't just survive, I saw, and it changed everything. When you truly ask God to open up your eyes, you're not just asking for vision. You're asking for responsibility. Because with sight comes stewardship, with clarity comes calling, and with calling comes the weight of obedience. That's why many people don't truly want to see, not fully, not deeply, because once you see truth, you're accountable to it. Once you see your purpose, you can't keep playing it safe. Once you see the brokenness around you, you can't keep living like it doesn't matter. God never opens your eyes just so you can look. He opens them so you can move. See, it's one thing to have eyes that function. It's another thing to have eyes that discern. Some people have 20/20 vision but can't see the danger of disobedience. Others see opportunity but can't recognize when it's not from God. You can look at open doors and not realize they're traps. You can chase promotion and not realize it's pulling you out of your assignment. So the prayer isn't just God, let me see. It's God, teach me how to see. When God opens your eyes, He's giving you the ability to see past what's visible. Past the surface, past the situation, past the applause, past the fear, past the temporary, because we live in a world where so many things are loud but empty, bright but shallow. We're surrounded by distractions disguised as destiny. And without spiritual sight, you'll chase noise instead of listening for the still, small voice. You'll follow trends instead of following truth. You'll let emotions drive decisions that should have been made in the quiet place of prayer. So before you ask God to show you more, ask Him to build your character to carry more. Because God isn't interested in showing you something you're not yet mature enough to handle. Vision without discipline becomes vanity. Revelation without surrender becomes pride. Purpose without purity becomes performance. God, open my eyes, but don't just give me clarity. Give me capacity. Capacity to obey what I see. Capacity to stay humble when vision makes me visible. Capacity to follow even when the path is unfamiliar. Capacity to carry what you place in my hands without letting it become more important than the one who gave it. And that's where many of us have to wrestle, because we've seen glimpses. God gave you a dream, a word, a confirmation. You saw a part of the picture, but the process didn't match the promise. The road got hard, the door didn't open, the season got long, and now you're tempted to doubt what you saw. You're questioning if it was really from God at all. But here's what I've learned. Just because it hasn't happened yet doesn't mean you didn't see correctly. The vision is still true. The word is still alive. The promise is still valid. But God is more committed to your transformation than your timeline. He'll hold the fulfillment until your foundation is ready. He'll withhold the spotlight until your soul is secure. He'll keep the door shut until your identity is rooted in Him and not in what He's about to give you, because sight without spiritual maturity can be dangerous. You'll start moving ahead of God. You'll start forcing what He meant to be revealed in time. You'll try to make happen in your flesh what was meant to come through faith. And that's why some of us feel like we're in a season of delay. But it's actually divine protection. God is protecting you from stepping into something that your heart isn't ready to hold. Not because He's punishing you, but because He loves you too much to let the gift destroy you. So instead of asking, God, why hasn't it happened yet? Maybe the better question is, God, what are you still building in me so I can sustain what you're preparing for me? Because when your eyes are truly open, you realize that every moment, even the waiting, is part of the training. The struggle wasn't wasted. It taught you how to pray. The silence wasn't empty. It taught you how to trust. The loss wasn't final. It taught you what really matters. The closed doors weren't rejection. They were redirection. The delay wasn't denial. It was development. God, open up my eyes so I don't resent the process. Open up my eyes so I stop comparing my timeline to someone else's. Open up my eyes so I recognize that you've been working behind the scenes all along, even when I didn't understand it, even when I didn't feel it. And now, because I see differently, I choose differently. I choose to walk by faith, not by fear, not by frustration, not by feelings. I choose to wait on God, not to sit in passivity, but to lean into His presence, His voice, His leading. I choose to obey because obedience is what unlocks the next step. Not talent, not visibility, not charisma. Obedience, obedience in the quiet. Obedience when it doesn't make sense. Obedience when it's costly. Obedience when nobody else understands the vision God showed you. And yes, it will cost you, but clarity is worth it. Vision is worth it. Purpose is worth it. Because once your eyes are opened, you stop settling for shallow. You stop living on autopilot. You stop letting fear lead, and you start walking in confidence. Not because you know all the answers, but because you know the one who does. You start aligning your life, not just around good things, but around God, things. You start filtering your decisions, not by comfort, but by calling. You start understanding that not every open door is an assignment, and not every closed door is a failure. Your discernment sharpens. Your appetite shifts. Your posture changes, because when your spiritual sight returns, you begin to walk differently. You begin to speak differently. You begin to believe at a level that no longer depends on your environment, but on your encounter with God. That's the kind of vision I'm asking for, not a glimpse, not a guess, not a feeling, but divine sight that keeps me anchored when life gets unstable. So here's my prayer: God, open up my eyes so that I don't just dream big, but walk right. Open up my eyes so that I don't just pursue platforms, but pursue purpose. Open up my eyes so that I don't lose my soul while chasing success. Open up my eyes so that I don't confuse noise with calling or ambition with anointing. Let me see you, Lord, in every moment, in every mountain, in every valley. Let me see what you see about my life, my season, my assignment, and once I see it, give me the boldness to act on it, the maturity to carry it, the humility to honor it, and the faith to walk it out one step at a time, because once you open up my eyes, I will never live blind again. There comes a point in every walk with God where vision is no longer about what you can see with your natural eyes, but about what you can't ignore with your spiritual ones. When God truly opens your eyes, you no longer just observe, you begin to discern. And when you start discerning, everything changes, because now, what used to seem small becomes sacred. What used to feel routine becomes revelation. What used to look like an inconvenience starts to feel like divine interruption. You're not just seeing moments, you're seeing meaning. God, open up my eyes so that I don't miss you in the ordinary, so I don't overlook you in the faces I pass every day, so I don't step over miracles because they don't match the image I imagined. It's not that God isn't speaking. It's that too often we're not seeing. We're expecting thunder and lightning, and he's showing up in a whisper. We're waiting for the parting of the sea, and he's moving in the silence of our surrender. So we scroll past what we should have sat with. We rush through what was meant to reframe us. We get so caught up in searching for the next that we fail to steward the now. But when your eyes are open, truly open, there's no such thing as a wasted moment. Because you realize God isn't just found in the breakthroughs. He's found in the buildup. He's not just present in the results. He's working in the resistance. And once you learn how to recognize him, you stop needing everything to look a certain way in order to believe he's near. You begin to interpret interruptions as invitations. You begin to interpret waiting as working. You begin to interpret struggle as shaping. You stop running from the fire and start asking, what are you refining in me through this? You stop questioning the wilderness and start listening for the word within it. That's what happens when your spiritual eyes open. You start seeing on a different frequency. You're no longer reacting to what's visible. You're responding to what's eternal. And yet, the deeper God opens your eyes, the more uncomfortable it can feel, because now you see things in yourself you used to justify. Now you're aware of motives that need to die. Now you're sensitive to patterns you used to excuse. And growth always demands grief. Grieving the version of you that could survive in blindness, but can't thrive in clarity. Because once you see truth, you can't it. Once you know better, you can't unknow it. Once light has entered, you can't go back to pretending it's not there, so you have to choose, will I act on what I now see, or will I close my eyes to stay comfortable, because sight is expensive, it costs you excuses. It costs you apathy, it costs you denial, it costs you the crowd, and sometimes it even costs you the version of the dream you thought you wanted, because God reveals a higher one, a purer one, a holier one. God, open up my eyes, even if it breaks my plans. Open up my eyes, even if it strips away what I thought I needed. Open up my eyes, even if it exposes parts of me I didn't want to confront. Open up my eyes, because it's better to live in painful truth than in comfortable delusion. And once my eyes are open, don't let me go back. Don't let me what you've shown me. Don't let me lower my standard just to fit into the room you're trying to pull me out of. Don't let me shrink my vision to match the expectations of people who never saw what you showed me. Because that's another layer of sight, the courage to walk in what you saw, even when no one else saw it too. The strength to stay faithful to your assignment, even when it looks foolish. The discipline to keep planting seeds, even when nothing has bloomed yet. When your spiritual sight deepens, your measurement of success shifts. You stop asking, is it working? and start asking, am I still walking? Walking by faith, walking in obedience, walking with integrity, walking with vision, even if no one claps, even if it doesn't trend, even if it's hidden. Because once your eyes are open, you realize that God never called you to perform. He called you to partner, to listen, to obey, to follow, to see. And now that I see differently, I live differently. I don't chase what glitters. I follow what's God, breathed. I don't seek affirmation from people who weren't assigned to my calling. I don't panic when plans shift, because I know who holds the map. That's the gift of divine sight. It produces stability. I don't have to be in control when I trust the one who is. I don't have to know the outcome when I know the author. I don't have to fear the unknown when I've already seen the evidence of his goodness behind me. Open my eyes, Lord, so I can see you, in the middle of uncertainty, in the middle of transition, in the middle of waiting. Open my eyes so I can live with conviction, not confusion. Open my eyes so I can respond from revelation, not reaction. Because if I can see you, I can survive anything. If I can see you, I can let go of what no longer serves me. If I can see you, I don't need to have all the answers. I just need to stay connected to the source. So show me where you are in this moment, not just where you're taking me, but what you're doing right now. Not just what's next, but what's needed. If this is the place you've positioned me, let me see its purpose. If this is the assignment you've given me, help me carry it with clarity. If this is the process you've chosen, help me trust it even when I don't like it. Because once I see from heaven's point of view, I stop striving and start surrendering. I stop questioning and start discerning. I stop rushing and start resting, not because the journey is easy, but because the vision is sure. And even if I walk through fire, I'll keep my eyes open. Even if I climb the mountain with trembling hands, I won't close my eyes again. Even if I have to walk alone for a while, I will not go back to blindness. Because God opened my eyes, not just to dream, but to discern, not just to hope, but to hear, not just to build, but to become. So let me become everything you revealed when my eyes opened. Let me walk in it with humility, with courage, with fire in my bones and grace in my steps. And let me never again settle for sight that doesn't come from you.